you're 20 times, I got it, it's being recorded. You're 20 times more likely to be victimized by that gun in a home than you are to use it in your own self-defense. Having a gun in a public place, trying to defend yourself, will likely increase and escalate the level of violence against you, and also the potentiality that you'd be injured or killed. Police officers carry guns sometimes 24 hours a day. We try to encourage them when they go to the shower to place it in another place, you know, to keep the water away from it. But we carry weapons in an off-duty capacity often. I do. It's a matter of my personal practice. However, we also know that when you're confronted by a person who has a gun, that you reaching for your gun may only escalate the situation where now you're shot trying to get your gun to defend yourself. First, cooperating with the individual, providing them whatever they're asking for, and de-escalating the situation rather than escalating it by going a gun on a gun. This is not Hollywood. We don't, you know, shooting somebody does not stop them immediately. Nor, so I don't encourage you. I've known officers themselves to be robbed at gunpoint, and their biggest concern is how do they distract the robber from finding their gun, not how do they get their gun to shoot, because they recognize the mechanics is that they don't have the drop on the individual, and they're likely to be shot at the same time they're shooting the other individual, which just leaves 2 dead people. And so carrying a gun is not the solution. It's not only against the law, but it's highly dangerous. And it's what, in my view, in part, is adding to the supply of guns, where we saw last year thefts from automobiles involving guns increased by 45%, because people don't want to take it into the nursery. People don't want to, they can't carry it. So they put it there, leave in their car, and then a bandit breaks into the car or simply opens the car. And instead of finding change, they find a little 380 or they find some other handgun, and they're off with it. And now that gun could be it could be steered towards a cop. Secondly, storing it in your home. If you feel that you must have a home defense weapon, I encourage you to have a shotgun, and then get some training on it. Go to a gun range or someplace that has qualified individuals to teach you how to safely handle that weapon. It's a deadly weapon. Again, I've seen people with accidents end up shooting themselves and dying because they didn't know how to handle a gun, or worse yet, a member of the family finding that weapon because it's not properly secured, or a person who's despondent or some moment of rage, accessing that weapon and taking another person's life or their own. Shotgun versus a pistol, there is no other round, there's no other sound in the entire world like racking of a shotgun. Yeah. And generally it's pointed in a general direction, and it generally doesn't go through several walls and killing someone who's not an intended target. So this is Mike Moore speaking. This is not the chief of police, but you're talking about gun safety and how do we deal with this threat out here practically. Pay attention to your surroundings, exercise good judgment, recognize that there is a threat. If you feel like you're being followed, drive to a police station, drive to a lighted area, call 911. Do not stop and confront the individual. You're going to be scared. You're going to be highly amped up. Have a plan. If something like that were to happen, what would be your plan? Communicate that plan with others. Talk through it. That mental rehearsal, if you ever, God forbid, got into a situation where you felt you're in that type of danger, you would have a plan in your head that you would scramble to where do you go to get help and assistance. So that's what I would suggest. Again, I want to keep this in proportion. Just like the retailers up and down the state were rightfully very concerned about the smash and grab series. We had 11 in Los Angeles in a 10-day period, a city of 4 million in a region of 10. These follow homes, 160 is way too many, but it is again, the chances of that impacting you are relatively very small. But I'm also cautioning you to take preventive measures to improve the odds. And then lastly, for you to know that I'm not minimizing it, we're committed to stopping that series. We're committed to getting to restoring a sense of safety from that type of being subject to that type of attack.
Thank you, Chief. To respect your time, I just want to have a couple of more questions. Heather Michaels, you have a quick question?
Well, first off, I just want to say thank you, Chief Moore, for your leadership, for your inspiration to the community, for so much that your entire department does, and truly by your leadership. We've been through so much in the last several years. Everything that you said has been just so valuable, because these are real threats that are facing our community every day. I know you really addressed it, but how we can help in the community. And I think it was fantastic because you mentioned again how the community can work with C-PAB, which, James has been really a fantastic leader in that sense. But really, it's so relevant, even more so than ever right now, for the community to be an extension of the eyes and ears to you guys, so that we can all work together to try to keep the community safe. One other thing, just real quick, is that you mentioned it's not necessarily one particular organized crime. There's all sorts of different facets, and that sort of seems like it's something that's kind of unraveled over the course of the last couple of years, which is impacting our communities. And lastly, being in the media myself, this is something that James and I discussed. How can we do a better job to help translate to the community what's facing us, and which will help you, help things, help really deliver your message better?
I think the message is, I would caution, is prevention, hardening the target, recognizing as we are seeing our reduction. What previously were reduction in property crime we're now in the plus column, and so when we see auto theft that's up 50% over a 2-year period, is to recognize that there's a number of chronic offenders, thieves that are out there, and breaking into cars. We're now in the plus column. We're now seeing an increase year over year. People breaking into cars, entering unlocked cars. They recognize that both of those are zero bail scenarios, and so they're actually not being held in pending trial or pending any type of judicial action. And so we have chronic offenders that are just circling through, the turnstile through the system. So it's really important that we harden the target. I'm working, the law enforcement is trying to be a voice for the people that talk about the time for zero bail. There was perhaps, certainly well intended. It may have been an instance of why that was necessary, or felt that it was necessary. But the unintended consequences is now it's being gamed. People are now capitalizing on it. And we've seen, when you look at auto theft as a perfect example, in my view, auto theft auto theft in Los Angeles went down year after year after year after year after year for a decade. We saw a reduction in auto theft. The March of 2020, you can look at our stats. Auto theft started turning the other way, and incrementally it has continued to go and rise each month after that for the last 18 plus months. Our auto theft arrests are up more than 30%. It's not that we're not capturing them, but what we are now tracking since April of this year, we began tracking people who were out on zero bail and got rearrested. Nearly 500 individuals that has happened to. And the most common offense regularly is auto theft. So they've learned that they can attack a late 1990s, early 2000 Honda, a Yukon, and a GMC, and that those vehicles take little more than a whim to use a shank to start the vehicle and steal the vehicle. They've learned that and so they're using them for transportation. They take them for a couple days. Many times they're recovered in the same neighborhoods in which they're stolen, and our officers are coming across them and are making those arrests. But then they're right back in the community setting, and if they need transportation, they're going to seize. They're going to take those cars. So providing protection for yourself is neighborhood watch is at part working in partnership with your neighbors, but part of it also is making your neighborhood a little more hardened than the neighborhood next door, so that suspects leave you alone and go next door. Lastly, recognizing that breaking into a car or simply getting and rummaging through a car, even when you find that person on your ring and we go out and identify them and arrest them, the chances of them remaining in custody is very slim. So securing your valuables, lock it, hide it, keep it, is as relevant today as any time. And while we can curse the system and we can say that criminal justice reform has gotten us in this terrible position, or otherwise, however you want to characterize it, what my key for you to ask for is prevention, is to help our communities help themselves by preventing these crimes from occurring. Lastly, support. There's an old movie, support your local sheriff, support your local police department, not just West Valley, but the Los Angeles Police Department. Our council members, our mayor, our elected officials are constantly being gaslit, our commissioners, about abolishing the police, defunding the police, reimagining public safety, abolish the jails, to just dump this whole thing. It's not rational. It's entirely irrational. There's not a place in the world that doesn't have a police department. Well, actually, there is. They're Marxist states. They're the nation. They're not democracies. But nonetheless, it has at times demoralized, I believe, elected officials and others from further and vocally supporting law enforcement. And any expansion, and sometimes some months, some years past, would be person would be shouted out of a room. That's changing, but that's changing in part by your voices, by the members of all of our communities being heard, and not just the isolated few that are on some maverick idea about how a society could work without police. So your help and support, restoring this department, getting us back on a growth plane, so that we can prepare ourselves for the 2028 Olympics, for meeting the needs of a 21st century department, for our city of 4 million that's on a growth, so that we can have officers on foot beats and in the malls and along shopping corridors, so they can attend and build trusting relationships through neighborhood watch meetings and other engagements. That's what we all strive for. Prior to this time, 2 years ago, we were looking for a manner in which to double our senior leads. One of the most critical aspects, but there's not a division in the city that couldn't use to twice the number of senior leads, and would help us. We have 168 in the entire city. That number hasn't changed in more than a decade. So those are the things I'd ask for: support, advocacy for the department, hold us accountable, call balls, strikes, and then prevention and taking care of oneself as taking care of a community.
Thank you, Chief. Stacy Rotter.
Hi, Chief Moore. I'm going to just, in the interest of time, I'm going to echo everything Heather said early on in her comments about appreciation for all that you do. And I'm going to just jump right into you and your team. I'm going to jump right into a couple of questions. So one, you mentioned, this is just a quick question. You mentioned if there's ever an issue, and I never really thought about like what exactly would happen to drive to a police station. Is there a protocol in place? Like if I just pull up in front of a police station, you guys aren't going to run out like the cavalry, but how do you initiate that you are in distress and you need help? So that's first question.
So let me handle these one at a time. So
Okay.
Dave,
Thank you.
Kevin Grimes, West Valley Station. I know that there's off hours that you're closed, but a person calls 911, says that they're being followed. They're going to a police station. What can they expect at West Valley?
Exactly what she said would happen. A rush out of the cavalry. We would have units come from outside. We'd have people come from inside, and they'd come out and meet her right there in the parking lot if she makes it to the parking lot. Now, the bad guy's probably not going to follow you into the parking lot, which is a good thing, but we'll be there to protect you as soon as humanly possible. We would ask for descriptions of yourself, description of your vehicle, description of the bad guys, if you know those, what has happened, and we would make sure that we're there as quick as possible to protect you. So you call 911 and you come to our station, you can expect us to help you immediately. We'll probably be outside before you get there.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, and hopefully I'll never have to utilize that, nor will any of us.
Hopefully you won't. And again, most bad guys are not going to make it all the way to the station. They're going to continue eastbound or westbound.
Right.
Okay. And So back to Chief Moore, my other questions, it's kind of twofold about the intersectionality about a lot of the things that you mentioned. You did touch on the topics of my questions already, but I'd love a little bit more information if possible. And my questions are on the topics of the kind of the turnstile. I love that that was the best way that, you know, I could describe it as the turnstile of the rearrests for the same crimes, and how we will likely be able to get out of this pattern and what the likelihood of us getting out of this pattern in the near future would be. And then the other part is, I was curious, even before you brought up the ghost guns, I was curious how many, like how much of that, how many, like, have ghost guns been a significant issue in the arrests that have been made on the two specific kinds of crimes that you mentioned, the smash and grabs and the, I forget the follow home one, the name for that. Sorry. Thank you.
So the, I'm sorry, the first question, you got me distracted by the ghost gun one. The first question was, oh, I'm sorry, zero bail. So presently, that was enacted by the court as a means of downsizing the custody settings because of the fear of the pandemic. Well, the pandemic has evolved, and we need to evolve. The present way, how it's dysfunctional is this: if you get a zero bail, you are not scheduled for an arraignment for 4 to 5 months from now. So you get arrested for burglary. We chase somebody out of your home, and they're arrested for burglary. They will go to the station. They'll be booked. They'll be released, and their first court appearance will be in March or April, probably the first week of April. What is that person going to do between now and then? It's broken. Prior to this allowance, if we arrested them for burglary, the standard bail for burglary was, Dave, was it 30? Is it 30,000? Lynette, do you know?
I think 30 is right.
I think 30,000. Now, there's probably individuals out there that can make $30,000 bail. It's a $3,000 bail, you know, with a bail bondsman plus some kind of collateral, but many could not. So within 48 hours, they would be in front of a judge. The judge would assess them as their continued risk to the community or not, and could make a decision. But if he said, no, this person, because of their criminal background, the nature of this crime, they're going to hold them over for trial. They have a prelim then within 10 court days. So they're already now involved in a prelim to whether or not there's enough evidence to hold them for trial. That's all within the first month, 3 weeks to a month of their arrest. And they've not been in a community setting to further commit new crimes and re-victimize the community. That doesn't happen today, except unless it's a serious violent offense. And so we need to get back to that, in my view, because it's not just that individual, but word on the street is spreading that, hey, there's a new game in town. And that's where it's proliferating, and other people who would otherwise be deterred are saying, I'll play my chances. Because to them, 4 months from now is an eternity. So we need to change that. It's going to take action by the judiciary. It's going to take a public outcry, not just law enforcement, because we're just seen as, you know, people look at us like, you know, we're a hammer and everything looks like a nail. And so this is not a surprising statement. You know, our officers have been talking about this. I've been talking about zero bail for gun possessions for a year now. People on the street today are carrying guns more than ever because two things: if you get arrested with a gun, it's zero bail. We had a woman that we arrested a month and a half ago and carrying a gun. She was out on zero bail the next day. So Monday we arrested her for carrying a gun. Tuesday she holds a woman hostage at a homeless encampment just north of City Hall, and we responded. She fires a gun shoots at officers trying to kill him. They return fire. They save the hostage life. She's in custody. She survived. She should never have been on that entire incident. If she had been arrested years ago under the bail system, she would likely have still been in jail, and that kidnapping would never have occurred. And that shooting would never have occurred. We've got to get back to that. Now I think with the retail thefts, and I'm just reading my notes, we just had a smash and grab. I knew I jinxed myself. We just had a smash and grab of two two shoe stores in the central and south part of the city, not out in the valley. But now that this is happening, it's growing up to a point where it's in shopping corridors and more affluent areas. I think that more people are waking up to, well, hold it, what do you mean they're not in custody? And that will help change that. But it's going to take some time, but it's going to also take us not moving our eyes. This society is like squirrel. We're over here, we're over here. We don't stay focused on issues, and we need to stay focused on this issue. And if we do, I think we'll change it, and it will not be a panacea, but it will be a start to restoring some of the deterrent value that our criminal justice system does offer. Ghost guns, they are playing more role in gang disputes and shootings, and persons experiencing homelessness, people who have previous felons and are prohibited possessors. About 1 out of every 4 guns today is a ghost gun, and the people carrying them are people who have criminal past. They're not gun hobbyists. They're not novice. These are people who can't otherwise legally acquire a gun, and they're responsible for last year. I think my stats. City Council just passed an ordinance prohibiting selling those parts or possessing those parts. But in that press conference, I think the stats I was given last year, ghost guns were attributable to 14 murders in the city of Los Angeles. So eliminate that gun. Would the murder have occurred? I don't know. Maybe the person would not have been able to have a gun. It takes a lot more to kill somebody with a stick than it does a gun.
Have the ghost guns been significant?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Stacy. Judith.
Put it in the chat.
Judith.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, that wasn't exactly the question. So
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Judith, you're
Okay.
on.
I'm on, me, Judith. Okay. So I want a little, I appreciate all your statistics. And you might be interested to know that today during the press conference, Gascon actually said that there's no difference between reoccurrence of crime for those that were released without bail. So that's kind of not funny. But my question is, let's say I have this follow home situation. I do not live close to the police station at all. I'm up by Mulholland and Calneva. Where else can I go? I'll be dead and slaughtered before I get anywhere near the police station.
Well, so a couple points. The point here is not, the point is to avoid the individual and go to a place of safety. And I'm calling out a police station. I'm not familiar with your home. I don't know what your approach is, if you're gate guarded or otherwise. The
Regular house.
So regular house, I would drive past your house. I would obey traffic laws, and I would find a well-lit place that there's people around. The reality is that these are individuals that are predators that are going to generally shy away from witnesses and other people that are there. And you may feel that West Valley Station or Topanga or California Highway Patrol or Fire Station, that those are all too far, but it's however far it is. If it takes you 30 minutes to get there, it takes you 30 minutes to get there.
Well, I have a fire station close by. Would that be a good alternative?
I'm sorry?
I do have a fire station close by. Would that be a good alternative?
The challenge with the fire station is that the fire station may or may not be occupied. They may be out on a run. The lighting there, the officers may, they're not police officers or firefighters. So, they may, I don't know that they're going to render you how much of an aid. It's just the point of this is that I'm looking for you to go to a place of safety, a police station. I know I have police officers at, and Dave's already assured me the cavalry is going to come out. So, but the point there is, but my point to you is that you're up on Mulholland and you got to come down. I know Van Owen and Reseda is a 25-minute drive away, but drive away from them, stay away from them, and drive to a point where we can get you help. A 911 call during the process will triangulate. The operator will ask you where you're at, where you're headed, and they'll give you directions. And we'll have we have airships that can then, and as well as patrol units that will then meet you. We see this happen on bus lines. We have bus operators that have people that are attacking others on the bus, or crime occurs on a bus. And what we do is, again, we'll talk to the operator. and find the route that they're going, alert our units. They'll wait and they'll set up what we call a code 5, or they'll take an observation post, and they'll find you, and then they'll rend you and give you aid.
Now, I mean, I think what's concerning to someone like me is, okay, this car thefts are up, this is up there. I'm so concerned about these physical one-on-one crimes I'm hearing about, that, you know, people in shopping malls aren't safe, jewelry taken off of people's person and purses, and it's a lot of one-on-one direct combat, shall I say. I mean, if you're in a shopping center, what are you looking for to avoid being in the middle of a smash and grab flash mob?
Well, what you're looking for, I'll use the Nordstrom's event that occurred where the bear spray was used in Topanga area. Those individuals were in and out of there in a matter of moments. In fact, the vast majority of the mall was unaware that smash and grab even occurred. So if you're fortunate enough that you're at a place where some of these occurrences happen, more likely than not, you may not even be aware that it happened. If you're in the midst of it, be a good witness. Don't confront them. Don't lock a door. Don't block their path. Just pay attention to your surrounding. Pay attention to them. Don't go chasing after them. Be a good witness. Wait for the officers and provide your account.
So
Thank you.
have they injured other people in this process of these flash mobs, or just go in for property and leave?
They have injured individuals tonight. This school, or this hit that we had tonight that I'm just getting a briefing on another text stream. They knocked over a 2-month pregnant woman who was a store employee. Fortunately, she was banged up. She'll be okay. Generally, it's physical force, knocking them over, slugging them, something to that degree. And generally, they've not been armed. But that's not to say that they haven't been armed in any of them, but generally, they've not been armed. They use a sheer force, the mob mentality, to like a herd in order to overpower the security guards. In Topanga, one of the individuals carried a bear spray canister, and there was a security guard there, and he was sprayed a couple of times with that, and which was unfortunate. Unfortunately, he survived that.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Maria H., you're on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I don't Zoom, so this is new to me. My question has to do with catalytic converter theft.
Yeah.
And I realize that smash and grabs are getting a lot of attention, but catalytic converter thefts are happening probably at the range of 20 to 40 a night unofficially. It's not necessarily all reported in the San Fernando Valley. And so my question, or like clarification, is I want to know what state law needs to be passed to stop zero bail on catalytic converter thefts and force our local DA to prosecute catalytic converter thefts as a felony requiring jail time, and quit giving what has to be in many cases organized crime a free lunch. So, and who would we talk to about drafting language for such a state law?
So, well-prepared question. So first of all, our California Police Chiefs Association is right now attempting to get legislators to fashion laws that require catalytic converters to be serialized.
Okay.
And also added structures. That will not fix the problem entirely, because that's only going to go forward. So new cars would have that added safeguard. The other thing, the things that we need is when we do need, investigatively, we're hampered by having limited resources to go to salvage yards to find who the unscrupulous owners are of those yards that are buying catalytic converters. We are working this issue. I read a briefing just Monday of a limited number of detectives from our commercial crimes that looked at 10 different metal yards and inspected them for these catalytic converters. They found one dealer, but he had proper paperwork and receipt for the device. But they are, you're right, this is easy pullings, if you will. It's a quick saw job and they're out. I want to thank Daryl Scroggins and West Valley for putting on your etching efforts and doing it safely. But that was a hot day when I was out there watching you guys. That was for awareness and also just to try to deter individuals from stealing it. It is, I would like to tell you that people caught for that crime are facing substantial time and punishment, but that's not reality. So
Right.
I'm not going to tell you that.
Right. No, I've spoken with people and they say that they get out a citation to appear or no bail. And just this
Which
last
speaks to the
month, I've
whole-
stopped two.
speaks-
This last month, I've stopped 2 catalytic converter thefts outside my house.
Wow.
So it's an obvious epidemic. And you know, I have a protection device on my car, but a lot of people don't.
Right.
And you know, it's $1,500 to $5,000 to replace the catalytic converter. And these guys, it has to be organized crime that is dealing with the metals and
No.
you know,
No, I'd
shipping
like
stuff
to-
off.
It's organized only in the sense that there's thieves that have learned the trade craft and they've got a receiver that they found, but it's not organized like the mafia.
Well,
These are-
according to Sacramento PD, they're finding smelting operations, which are definitely organized.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I hopefully, if, you know, I'll take any answer that stops the problem, but what we're finding right now is narco offenders and low-level thieves that have found they found somebody that they can peddle this stuff to, and they're getting $500 to $800 to $1,000 for a device.
Thank you, Chief. Last question, out of respect for your time. You've often spoken about your goal of utilizing 5,000 volunteers as a way to help establish greater communication and partnership between LAPD and the community. Do you still have that goal in mind? And what additional help is needed to accomplish it in spite of COVID?
Well, the biggest help I need is COVID to be gone. That is very much still a goal. We have about 1,800 right now. I know that each of our areas are trying to protect our volunteers in a COVID environment. I think the vaccination process hopefully has been helpful. We do require all volunteers, and is one of the vaccine requirements that includes and extends to volunteers. I'm hopeful that volunteers working with local captains can find ways to make follow-up calls with victims, to do various taskings that the area can benefit by your services. Citizen patrols or community patrols, I'm supportive of. Restarting those, I think, is, if they haven't been restarted already, I'm encouraging areas to do so in a COVID compliant manner, which means masks. Volunteers need to face the same, have to subscribe by the same rules as our rank and file do, which means that they're going to work in pairs, that they need to be masked in a public setting. Now, that can be discouraging to a number of people, and I recognize that there's volunteers that some of these requirements, and also concerns by area captains and so forth about administering this, that's hampered or constricted some of our volunteer use. Dave, as a matter of, I've not been briefed on what West Valley's protocols are. How's volunteers working with you?
We have our volunteers, most of them are back. We have a couple of volunteers working up with detectives, and of course, James and his team of volunteer community patrols are out there 4 days a week, and they're doing a great job, several hours a day. So
Good.
they're
We
almost
will
back.
replace the tires on those cars.
We're gonna have to. We're
Funny
definitely-
you should say that, Chief. Thank you. One last question, Chief. Once defined by the LA City Council, how will LAPD handle the enforcement of the proposed Los Angeles Municipal Code 4118 ABC?
So it's all been passed, it's all been approved. A and B 4118 deals with ADA requirements, blocking entry into a business or exit, blocking access to a fire hydrant. The C portion is the one that deals with, you have to post the location, it has to be identified by council action as a problematic location, outreach and engagement services need to be in place, and then at which point we as a city move into an enforcement posture. And my goal there is that the sanitation and council deputies work together where law enforcement may stand there, but that law enforcement's not, that we work in a manner that people realize they gotta go, they gotta move, and that we don't end up making arrests. Making arrests, that's a turnstile arrest. the person's in our custody, the person's back out of our custody. So what's really critical to me is if we're going to, as we approach these sites on 4118C, is that we have sanitation services that remove all of the material. If it's trash, they just discard it and destroy it. If it's personal property, then they store it. If the person still won't leave, standing there with nothing but his own, what he's got on him, and we have to make an arrest, then we will. But what's critical is that that person's material be moved to a storage facility and away from that location, or be removed from the immediate area of that location. If you leave that material there, make the arrest, then the person simply goes back to the same location afterwards. So it's really critical that what's really needed on 4118C is that we get sanitation services that remove all this material. If we do that regularly, and I'm happy that the council has moved on this, if we start doing that regularly, the size of these encampments will be reduced. They've been allowed to grow and flourish because they've had nobody moving them. I'm also encouraging the council to remove the moratorium relative to RVs and other vehicles that are used as domiciles. They're used as, I think that those, just because you have an RV doesn't mean, and you call it your home, doesn't mean you should be able to park it in a red zone, or that matter, a residential area, and set up an effective, a structured encampment with the ability to get sewer services, water services, trash and debris, the impact it has on the quality of life for that neighborhood. I am supportive of zones or areas that such RVs could go to and could be and would be allowed to remain. And then their services should be such as clean services or dump services, so that you could service those locations and they wouldn't pose the health hazard that they have. But that's I never thought that I'd want to get back to that level of discussion, because this last 4, 5, 6 months with this violence that has come at us, with the 12-year-old boy that was shot and brutally killed Monday, and this 14-year-old young man that was shot and killed on Tuesday, and these follow homes, and the terrible loss of life with Miss Advent, and the home invasions that we've seen. These are, our work has really been reprioritized and cut out for this. I'm thankful for people like Larry Martinez and Daryl and others that are senior leads. They're working that problem, but they're also trying to work with council office on 4118 relative to these special locations, as well as addressing the A and B portion, which is the blocking of these ADA access and ingress and egress.
Thank you, Chief. Last question. In July of 22, the 988 hotline will be, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, the 988 hotline is suicide prevention, but that is scheduled to be expanded to include calls for help for the mentally ill, as well as suicide prevention. How will LAPD handle the increased activity? Will there be an expanded HOPE team aspect that will be incorporated, et cetera?
Okay, so James Brown, is that your last question?
That's the
Or your
last question.
That's the last question. You said it 3 times. I guarantee it's the last one.
Well, thank you, Captain.
No.
Sorry about that.
Excuse me, a little fun there. Okay, so just to let you know I'm listening. Okay, I just want so 988. The desire is that 988 doesn't go to a 911 operator.
Right.
It goes to a county service. So actually, LAPD will not touch those calls, nor will fire. They will go to a suicide prevention hotline or service, and eventually outreach workers that would go there. We have today, Dee Dee Hirsch is our mental health hotline, and we do suicide prevention calls that we refer to them. They do an assessment of whether a response is needed or just follow-up care. We've moved more than 800 calls to them since their services started. 988's concept is to move it entirely out of the police and fire realm, something I fully support. Again, we need mental health workers to work the same hours that police officers do. And why they don't is why we're so much involved.
Right.
And people don't want us to be there. We don't want to be there. We don't need to be there if we had others that were available. That doesn't mean all these things. There's suicidal individuals that are violent, that pose an imminent risk to to anyone that's in front of them or with them. And those are always going to require, I think, a co-response model. But there's many calls that just need a therapist, that need a voice and an ear and some counsel, that police officers are now door knocking for lack of another resource.
Great,
With that,
thank you.
I'm going to, just in case Mr. Brown has another last
No,
question, I'm going
sir.
to say,
No,
I
sir.
really have enjoyed this invitation. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight, or be here to speak with you. And I just encourage your heart. I talk about some things at times that can seem a little dire. I'm not a real cheery guy. I'm sorry. I try to be a little bit of fun, but I do have faith and confidence that this city has got a bright future. It's got challenging times, but I'm encouraged that people such as yourself are at the table, that we're arguing and debating and fighting things that we may have received that we don't like now and that we want to change. And I just encourage you to be those voices. Do not give up. The people who have put some of these awkward and unworkable solutions in place are doubling down. They're going to bet that you're going to get frustrated, you're going to throw your hands up, and you're going to walk away and just say, the hell with it. Don't do that. Don't give up. Don't give in. Fight, move, have your voices heard. And we as a department support you. When you get it wrong, there'll be voices you'll say, we'll say, nope, don't agree with you. But but in this area here, I think there are some measured adjustments that can be made. And I said this earlier today, and we'll either make those adjustments or this will continue, it'll amplify, and criminal justice reforms that we've achieved over the last 2 decades will be lost, because at some point the pendulum will swing very, very hard to the right.
Chief, thank you so much. Thank you, Chief. On behalf of West LA, LAPD, C-PAB group, I'd like to thank you for spending time with us tonight. Sorry to go over time, Captain, but they were blaming on Heather. But
Blame it on my loud remarks.
at any rate, Chief, thank you.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated. Thank you, sir.
God bless.
God
Thank you very
bless.
much, Chief.
Happy holidays. Captain Grimes, final words.
Yeah, I'm not going to extend this much longer. We won't have any personal reports from the senior leads tonight. If you have any questions for the senior leads, please contact them offline or via email or telephone tomorrow. I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. And this will probably be my last C-PAB meeting, as I am retiring from the Los Angeles Police Department coming in the new year. So I want to thank you all. You've been wonderful to meet on Zoom. Haven't met most of you in person because of COVID.
That's right, because under the juvenile system, not only can you hold somebody until they're 25.
Sorry about that, Cap.
Well, that's okay. I only regret I haven't been able to meet a lot of you in person because we had C-PAB via Zoom for the last 2 years. But it's been a pleasure to work with the police department and with you guys. And I'm humbled to be able to leave, and I'm thankful. So thank you very much for all your service to us.
Captain, it's been a pleasure to work with you, and I'm sure we get a chance to speak before you leave.
James, I'd just like to say a few words. It's Natalie.
Yes, Natalie, yes.
Yes. You know what, Dave, thank you for your service. I've known Dave Grimes a long time, and his moral compass is unwavered. His character, untouched, and he's a true professional, and this organization will fill his loss. But I am so happy. I've heard his plans, what he and his wife plan to do, and that he's gonna, enjoy that next chapter and have, a long and prosperous retirement. But Dave, I'm gonna miss you, not both professionally, but personally, because you've been a good friend and you've been there in times of need and you've provided great counsel. And so with that, just thank you for what you do. And I publicly wanted to acknowledge you in front of your community.
Captain Grimes, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Andrew. Thank you.
The time is now 7:40. And so with that, I will officially declare this meeting adjourned, and thank everyone once again for attending. Thank you, Captain Grimes. It's been a pleasure knowing you, sir, and I'm sure I'll see you before you leave.